Welcome everybody. First things first, as always, if I could just get a quick audio visual check, please. The microphone was doing some funny stuff, so I just want to double check you can hear me all right. Yeah, let me know if you can see my charts clearly. You can hear me all right. How are you all doing this fine day, evening, night, wherever you are? If you appreciate these live streams, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe if you have not yet. With that, let's hop right into it. As soon as I get the go ahead that we're all good here, I think we are. Let me just. Sorry, I'm just having technical issues here. Perfect. Here we go. All perfect, Ola. Right on. Thank you guys for being here with me once again. Well, guys, Bitcoin is seeing a nice breath of fresh air for once. So I want to take a look at a few key levels I'm watching and look at this pump with a level-headed approach rather than going completely blind from FOMO and after a few hours of green price action, because you know that we typically see that after some aggressive selling, all it really takes is a couple hours of buying pressure and everyone gets very excited. And honestly, like I said, it's great to see that we are actually seeing somewhat of a nice reaction off support. And yeah, honestly, it's great to see such a solid pump today. However, something we need to remember is a retrace is very normal after breaking structure. I mentioned this many times in every single stream that I do. So with that, I want to hop over to the 4-hour chart here. This is the 1 minute. Let's hop over to the 4-hour. So what I mean by that with this retrace being quite normal, guys, is first of all, nothing's been invalidated with this macro setup. I know we've been watching this for 2 months now. I think ever since we approached the 786, basically the start of May, that has basically, I mean, we're still in the same level of resistance that we've been in for months at this point. It's nice to see that we have so much volatility. As far as more of a scalper myself, more trading the shorter time frames, it's great to see that we have had these nice big volatile moves with everything going on in the world. But what I'm talking about, guys, is let's actually remove these fibs here and just look at the basic market structure. Is since we have broke this low, and I mean, that's where you started seeing a whole bunch of people start getting very bearish and whatnot, and myself included, right? The difference is I'm not shorting into support. I'm not looking for that breakout play. I'm more looking for shorting resistance. And then, you know, if it ends up just absolutely nuking through support, then fantastic. But realistically, what more often happens, and honestly, guys, the whole premise around the STUBER fibs is basically, it's not like it's some magical equation, but what it really is and what it really helps to drill into a guy's head is that after breaking structure, it's very natural to get some sort of a retest, right? And the fact that we now have this low and a lower low, that means the highest point between the two is my lower high structure here. So at this point, I would expect, you know, if the downtrend is going to continue, that we could have some resistance stepping back in at around 108,000 US dollars. Just because, again, guys, this would be a typical STUBER fib setup. If this was a 5-minute chart, that's how I would be looking at the structure. So the 4-hour is no different. It takes a little bit longer to play out. And in turn, that also, since we have had, you know, actually a day or two of buying pressure, I mean, that's where people start to really feel that FOMO, because it feels like it's never going to stop, just because, you know, we haven't seen this in a while, because we've been trending down for, you know, a fairly significant amount of time here. So at this point, really, I don't see any reason why Bitcoin has to run into problems quite yet. I mean, obviously it could. We have other resistance, right? I mean, if you want to kind of take the high of this little range here, sure, you know, we could be at some micro resistance right now. But as far as looking for a retrace of the move that, you know, we just swept the lows here, I would be looking at pulling a fib from the top of that range. So the STUBER fib setup here would be starting around, I'm going to call it 107.9K. And the 886 is up at about 109.2K. From there, we also have the swing fail zone of that, which would be basically running from 110.6 all the way up to 112.5. Guys, I've been quite vocal for a long time now that basically on the mid to long term trend, I am cautious and even a little bit bearish. I shouldn't say a little bit, quite bearish, as long as we're below 115K, because this macro Stuber fib never was invalidated. And we haven't reached any of the macro targets yet. They would be lining up around 93K and 83K. I don't know if we're going to hit those levels or not. I trade more so the 5 minute and the 1 minute either way. But this range has not changed. The fact that we have not broke above the 115 and we have not tested the 0.5 or the 214 fib levels, that just means that we are still in this range. We still have this valid setup here, and we are still facing resistance right now on the macro time frame. And like I said, being that we set this new lower low, yeah, it's great to see that we reclaim that level, and that's great for a nice long opportunity to long the retest of this. I mean, that would have been beautiful. But just remember that as we get closer to the top of this range, it's time to start being cautious again as we approach some of those levels. So just be cautious if we keep climbing. I know the FOMO is strong. I also have that gut feeling, not even a gut feeling, just I have those emotions that say, you know what, we're climbing pretty fast here. I would love to FOMO into this just in case we end up going parabolic, but that's just not where the safe play is. Don't get me wrong. If we end up just absolutely taking off to the upside, my investment accounts, my actual portfolio, my investments, my spot holdings, they are going to be very excited, just like I will if we go parabolic. But as far as a level-headed approach, as far as with my trading account, I need to look at this a little bit more realistically and just keep my emotions at bay. And that's why I love pulling fibs, is because they're just so systematic. It doesn't mean that we have to get rejected at this resistance, but it does mean that, there's absolutely no frickin' way that I would be looking for new longs as we approach that new resistance. I am actually in a little bit of a long currently. I got into it late. It is by no means catching it from the bottom or anything like that. I will go into it in a second because it just kind of revolves around another strategy. I had actually mentioned it, not the long, but the same strategy I was not looking at. I did play a short off the same strategy. This the opposite way. I'll get into that in a little bit on the shorter time frames. But yeah, I just really want to drive this home that, it's very normal to get a retrace after sweeping our structure like this. So yes, it's good. I love it. It's good to be excited to see Bitcoin surviving. But again, we just have to be careful when we approach those resistance levels. As far as the weekly, literally nothing has changed. The weekly, basically, I am going to be cautious and leaning bearishly until this divergence gets broken on the RSI. Basically, every time we get that divergence, I've been very vocal about this. Some people probably wish that I would shut the hell up about this pattern already, but I love looking for these double top setups that also match up with an RSI divergence from overbought down to the 70 level. It's the one that ended the last market cycle. In this market cycle, it has called a few 30% corrections. Currently, we have a 10% correction from the most recent one. It's possible that this is going to be the smallest one by far that we've seen this cycle. But just again, remember that, every time we see this pattern show up in the charts, it typically leads to very large moves. So maybe that's all that the bears were able to get out of it, but it is something worth mentioning. That being said, if we break this RSI trend line and we get the RSI back into overbought conditions, I will be bullish. I will be bullish with everybody else. I will think that we are going to break resistance in that case, because it would be showing a bit of a divergence on the other side, right? If we are approaching that same level of resistance here, but the RSI actually is showing more strength, that's where I would be interested in actually trying to long the break out of this. But as it stands right now, we still just have the overextended bearish divergence. So I just can't get that FOMO going quite yet. All Bitcoin needs to do is basically climb another 5%, and then my bearish theories get invalidated. And from there, we can all celebrate and, be happy on the bull market there, as long as structure doesn't change very quickly, obviously. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at on the weekly. The monthly, also nothing has changed from my last stream. We are still struggling with that same resistance. We still have that bearish cross on the Wave Master. It is trying to cross bullishly once again, but there is 7 days left in this candle. So with that being said, I want to zoom into the shorter time frames here, you guys. I was talking about a strategy that I did end up taking along, and again, it was late. It was, in fact, late. It is not a good entry by any means, but I am able to take some profits off this just because this is a bit of a strategy I've been coming up with, and it's a very simple one, but with the MDX Trendmaster indicator. A lot of you guys here live with me, it's very possible. Well, actually, I know a lot of you guys just from seeing the chat right now. I know a lot of you MDX people are in here, and I know a lot of you guys have these indicators. This is something that I use with the Trendmaster, and honestly, it's my favorite indicator. The RSI and the Trendmaster are my two favorite indicators, and it's not so much. And for those of you who are repeat visitors on this channel, first of all, thank you for always coming back. But this is something that I talk about on all these streams as well, is that I like to bring up the Trendmaster, and it's not so much every sell signal or every buy signal that I take all too seriously, but it's when they start shifting in a different direction, right? Like here, for example, we got a lower sell signal, and as long as we don't break above that pivot point that caused us to get that new sell signal, then things are looking good for a bearish setup, right? So I ended up shorting that retest of that trend and, took some profits along the way, right? I mean, here I was talking about it earlier this morning, right from where I was looking for a lower sell signal. And then we ended up getting it. It ended up pushing the price down, and we ended up just nuking to the downside a little bit. But this is very important, guys. Remember, this signal was just a 1 minute chart, so don't forget to pay yourself along the way, because you want to remember what time frame you're actually trading. Because if you are entering a trade based on a 1 minute signal and you're looking at holding on to that for several hours or the whole day or anything like that, you're going to be most likely disappointed, because it's, again, just remember to trade the time frame you're actually trading. So this was absolutely a beautiful call, even though it did reverse, and we have reversed that whole downside move. That's great. That just means that there's volatility. As long as you're paying yourself along the way, this is absolutely beautiful. So like I said, I did get into a little bit of a long, and it was basically the exact opposite thing I was looking at. Basically just that since we had these lower sell signals, we ended up breaking that resistance. We ended up printing a higher buy signal. So I longed the retest of this trend and basically just had my stop loss below this structure here. So a nice tight stop loss for the size of move that we're getting here. And we ended up printing another higher sell signal. So notice I'm not interested in the sell signal, but we got another higher buy signal. And again, it was a beautiful signal that called for a nice big push to the upside again. Once again, this is a 1 minute chart, so take it for what it is. This does not mean we're going straight to all-time highs from here. It's just something that I love looking at with these indicators. I've been mostly using them, using this strategy as sort of confluence to looking for, which direction I should be pulling STUBER fibs and that sort of thing. But lately I've been trading it a little bit, just kind of testing it with actually entering based on those signals. And, trades like this, it's very tight risk for the size of move that we got here. And once again, the reasoning for that, I mean, the indicator is called the Trend Master indicator, right? It's good at pointing out a trend. So when the signals start trending in a direction, I want to play that momentum. So very cool. Even Perma Bear Stu ended up taking a long today. Like I said, it wasn't the best, but it was profitable. So I really don't care from here. I'm obviously paying myself along the way, because I would never enter a 1 minute trade way back here and be looking at holding it for all of it for several hours, right? I'm paying myself along the way. But yeah, very interesting strategy, especially for those of you in the MDX ALGO community, those guys, or those of you who have the indicators, period. But guys, that's not to say that that only works on this indicator. Okay, that's one thing that I want to make clear, because I know not everybody wants to pay for indicators and that sort of thing. If you are interested in the indicators I use, there is a 10% discount in the description down below. But I understand not everybody wants to pay for indicators. That's totally fine. But you may start to notice something like this with other indicators you use. Just paying attention to not necessarily each individual signal that an indicator is giving you, but notice which direction those signals are printing and see if there is any follow through behind that theory. Because this is just one, like I said, I mainly use that strategy with this specific indicator. But I would be interested to see it on other indicators as well. And I have looked at it on several other indicators, but depending what you use, obviously you have to do your own back testing and see if that's going to work for your specific indicators as well. But yeah, very cool. Not so much that it's just going to be perfect every time, but like I said, for the potential for an actual trend, being this is a trending indicator, to be able to catch a trend-sized position or trend-sized profit or reward versus a scalp-sized risk is very appealing to me. So if we end up setting another low below this level here, I'm actually going to set a partial take profit now, just a trigger order to close half of my position if we end up losing this support here. And then the rest of my position will be stopped if we end up losing the most recent buy signal. Because at that point, then I'm looking at it as, hey, the trend may be shifting once again. It's losing momentum, whatever. I'll just lock in the rest of my position at that point. So we'll have to see what happens there. I do want to catch up on the chat here, you guys, one more time. If you appreciate my level-headed approach on the markets, you appreciate some of my strategies that I share and just these streams in general, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet. I'm going to catch up on the chat here. Let me know in the chat how you guys are feeling on the markets. Do you think we are going straight to all-time highs with this price action? Do you think the nuke is just getting started? How do you all feel on this? It's all working good. Good to see those confirmations. Thank you. Thank you. The pump is too quick, right? DJ Seafair. I don't really have a strong opinion about if the pump was too quick or not. But again, to me, it's just the fact that it's a very natural reaction when you end up sweeping market structure like this to get some sort of a retracement. Like I said, that's the whole foundation around my STUBER fib strategy and everything is really just those fibs help you to remember that when structure breaks, rather than FOMOing into a breakout, for example, on the long side of things, how many people FOMO'd into a breakout there when we broke all-time highs when it just turned into a swing fail? How many people FOMO'd into a short as we broke support, whereas it was just a swing fail again, right? You see it all the time. And I mean, not to say that breakouts can't happen, but far more often you end up getting some sort of a swing fail, liquidity grab, retrace, and really just set up for a perfect bull trap. I mean, I can guarantee you that because I see it all the time, whenever I pull these fibs on the 4 hour, as soon as we hit the 786, which would currently again be around 108,000 US dollars, as soon as we end up hitting that, social media is going to go crazy and you are going to see a whole bunch of hopium and FOMO posts right as we approach that level. It's like clockwork. It's a perfect bull trap area. Not to say that it can't break out. It's just very typical to see that sort of structure play out. So just something to be a little bit cautious of, you guys. Chaos, good to see you here again, my friend. Someone's in a short from 104,992. Well, hopefully you either have a tight stop or you have low leverage and you're looking at laddering into a position more so. Because again, the fact that we are so high up into this range that I have pulled here, I really just don't see a reason why we wouldn't actually test the STUBER fib. Obviously, we don't have to. But, being we are already technically, we're so close already. We've already made it through the halfway point of the range. I really have a feeling that we are going to be targeting those higher levels there before we end up seeing further downside. The trend master indicator, let's bring it up on the 4-hour, you guys. So this is another thing, right? We do have these lower sell signals. I mean, I was really warning about that at this level down here in one of my previous streams, that we were printing a lower sell signal, another lower sell signal, a little bit of mixed signals because we have higher buys, lower sells. But it was in fact a big warning, and we did end up getting a nice push to the downside. Yeah, obviously it's reversed now, but that was a beautiful move to the downside. Plenty of time to take some profits on something like that. And also these lower trending sell signals has not been invalidated yet. So I would be looking at basically this pivot point, the last time we pivoted before this last sell signal here. Basically, from a bearish stance, I wouldn't really want to see us get above 109,000 US dollars. If we end up breaking above that, then it looks like we're breaking that trend of the trend master with the 4-hour lower sell signals. So at that point, I think it would be interesting. Well, not interesting. I think it would be in my best interest that if we end up breaking 109,000 US dollars, that's where I'm going to be hopping over to the weekly chart and seeing if the RSI is breaking out of this trend line as well. Because if that's the case, then we may very well be going to test new highs. You know, that's a couple things that I'll be eyeing up, that if that happens, I will be strongly considering changing my tune on the market at that point. Be nimble, but not fearful. The bottoming zone is likely here. I personally don't think we've bottomed yet. But again, I'm open to the idea of bouncing before further downside. And honestly, I would love to see us go parabolic. My meme coins, my micro caps, my altcoins, they would all love it so much. Even my Bitcoin holdings, but more so excited about the lower cap stuff if we end up going parabolic. But I just don't know how reasonable that is at this point. Stu, are those posts you made in the MDX portal or separate with you? These ones would have been in my private Telegram channel, which for those of you who are interested, it is free for those who sign up on BloFin using my link. There is a QR code as well as a link in the description down below that will take you to a sign up bot. And then after signing up to BloFin and depositing the required amount into the futures account, like I said, it's free, but that is your own money to trade with. It's by no means payment to me, other than I would rather take a little bit of fees off the trading fees from the exchange rather than charging people directly. So that's kind of how that works. But that is with my private Telegram channel. That being said, in the MDX ALGO community, I always mention this strategy. I mention it in my live streams over there. I mention it just in posts as well, because it is one of my favorite strategies as far as not even just for entries, but like I said, risk management, confluence. You know, there's other ways to use indicators as well. Eugenia says not to all-time highs in this move. I agree. I think we are going to set a lower high personally, but we're going to have to see what the market makers decide to do, right? It depends where the liquidity is going to be. If everybody is starting to flip bearish, I know everyone's starting to say that, oh, everybody's bearish, therefore we're bullish. I don't necessarily agree with that, because a lot of people are claiming everything's bearish and then being bullish in the same sentence, right? So I don't know, mixed feelings on that. Happy to go either way. Like I said, I mean, I mostly trade the 1 minute and the 5 minute anyways, so I just like volatility. I don't really care which direction we're going personally. All-time highs soon. They announced peace in Iran and Israel. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we've been misled by tweets and headlines in the past, so I don't want to hold my breath on that, but we will see. Chaos, that's an interesting one. Hey, Stu, something I've started doing recently is to actually mark out my chart when I feel that FOMO. Do you do something similar as a personal indicator with back testability? No, honestly, I don't tend to mark that out. But a big reason for that is because I treat these live streams that I do as a little bit of a trade journal, right? So as I'm talking through my emotions and kind of laying out my emotions and talking about specific levels, it really makes it easier for me to stick to a plan and to plan ahead. The most importantly, planning ahead, because we don't know for sure what's going to happen, but if certain things happen, we want to be able to react at those levels, right? The market was super bearish, expecting World War III. Look at oil, use oil or U.S. oil dumping, no war. Yeah, that is actually something I noticed earlier too. The fact that oil was actually on the decline rather than pumping. Yeah, again, it does seem like maybe the war is put on hold, but you guys know that I'm not really much of a fundamental guy. I mean, in my opinion, I know a lot of people are blaming that little bit of downside that we had on the war, but I've been warning about this potential double top bearish divergence basically since we broke 89K. I was saying to watch out for this exact setup. So, in my opinion, it was already in the charts. And at that point, we were just consolidating along resistance until the market got a nudge that it needed. So, not to say that fundamentals don't make a difference. It's just that if you think you're getting early insider information by reading tweets and headlines and stuff, you're far mistaken. If you want any hope of having insider information or early information, that's where we look at the charts, because that's where we actually see what's happening. That's where we see how much strength is actually in the charts and what the bigger players are actually doing, ahead of time. And then from there, like I said, we get that nudge to the downside and we got a nice little move. But maybe that's it, right? We're going to have to see. Liquidity at 112K. Pray for me. I agree with the hopium coming in at 108K. I will say my prayers. I will say my prayers for you. And obviously, it depends what kind of leverage you're using, how you're laddering into your positions, all that sort of stuff, right? So as far as looking for an actual swing, the bearish theories have not been invalidated yet. So as far as looking for a macro swing setup, I'm personally still favoring the bearish side of things. But, we'll have to see. If the war has de-escalated and that is actually going to make a difference on the charts, then we'll see it in the charts, right? We will either take out our all-time high and actually that 115 invalidation that I was talking about earlier, so about 115K. If the price invalidates that, or the RSI shows a very strong divergence of we go back into overbought territory, at that point, hey, at least it's in the charts and the fundamentals are lining up. That's when I am willing to consider the fundamentals. But for me, it's always market structure first and fundamentals and that sort of thing after, as confluence, if anything. It's exactly how Chaos uses Discord as an open journal to run through the thought process. Yeah, exactly. It's so much easier to avoid gut feelings when you have your own feelings in writing and, from a level-headed approach, you have it all journaled. And then from there, it just makes it easier to stick to your plan. Gold even came down as well. And oil went up with a very short while. Yeah, we're going to have to see. Very interesting point in the markets right now. But like I said, happy to go either way. As long as the markets are volatile, I'm going to be happy. Because you guys know how ridiculously bearish I have been for basically all of 2025 at this point. But I'm still willing to take a swing at the odd long position. doesn't really matter what my feelings are, where I think we're going in the mid to long term, because as long as it's volatile and I'm trading lower time frames anyways, as long as I can start nibbling on some profits and updating my stop loss fairly quickly, that's the main thing for me. Yeah, is anybody else in any interesting positions, any strong feelings about the market? Do you think I'm, totally out to lunch for the fact that I think we could end up facing some resistance if we test up to the STUBER fib? Like I said, if we end up breaking 109K, I'm way more open to the idea of testing all-time highs again, which wouldn't be that much further, and even potentially breaking the highs at that point. But as it stands right now, it's just a little bit early to say whether or not that's going to happen. I strongly believe we're going to start seeing the crazy FOMO posts happen right as we approach around 108,000 US dollars. What else? I want to zoom out a little bit. Let's check out the 5-minute. Technically, I mean, this looks more like a liquidity grab, if anything, but we did technically take out that micro higher low on the trend just with a wick. The fact that it's just a wick, I don't know how much weight I want to give that, but it's at least some sort of sign of weakness here. Actually, speaking of that, rather than closing half my position down here, if we set a new low, I'm actually going to close a quarter of my long from down here, a quarter of it right now, just in case we get something like this as far as a rejection, because we're getting close to a 786. But then another quarter if we end up breaking these lows, setting another lower low. But I just want to take the most I can out of this, so I am closing a quarter right now. Just give me 1 second. All right. Let's check some indicators. What is the RSI on the 4-hour? We have a little bit of room to the upside yet before we're even approaching that 70 level. So again, I think we could go a little bit higher. Wave Master indicator actually called a beautiful reversal down here. You can see this purple arrow down here. Got a bullish cross followed by our pivot there, or a reversal warning. Beautiful call there. I never took that trade. I ended up in my long a little bit late, but it is what it is. Yeah, 5-minute. What's the trend master saying? So we still have this buy trend. So this is one of those cases, same thing on the buy trend. On the 5-minute, we obviously invalidated the shit out of this sell signal here. And we've just been holding this buy trend here on the 5-minute as well so far. So that is still looking like there's momentum favoring the bulls. Not really interested in opening a new short at this time. The next time I'm going to open a short will be much like what I talked about earlier, when we start to see a shift in this indicator. As soon as I end up getting, obviously at this point, even if we lose support here, we're going to print a higher sell signal with this indicator. But at that point, that's where I would like to look for a lower buy followed by a lower sell signal. That would just give me some confidence that the trend may be shifting a little bit early. Aside from that, I want to wait and see if we end up testing up to that 108,000 US dollars level. Basically at this point, like I said earlier, I see no reason why we wouldn't end up testing up into this purple box here. But if the indicator, for example, if my trend master indicator starts showing signs of a reversal early, then at that point, that's when, I can get into a position a little bit early, basically, without waiting for my targets. So we're going to have to see what happens there. Perma bear per usual, not really, because like I said, I'm in a long today. So, I guess if that's perma bearish is taking longs, then so be it. Yeah, sorry. I know I had some requests to try and mention the price on my TA. Many of you guys will know that I often just point to levels and I point to my fibs and I say this level, et cetera, et cetera. So the reasoning for that, you guys, is because I look at market structure so much more than I give a shit about what the price actually is, because at the end of the day, market structure trumps everything as far as trading goes. So I more so look at the levels and how the structure is forming. I don't really look at the numbers all too much. So it's a bit of a bad habit that I don't always say it, but I know not everybody's actually watching the screen for one. Some people have visual issues. Some people are listening while driving and that sort of thing. So I'm going to try and do better on mentioning the price levels as I do my TA. Sorry if I end up, carrying on with my bad habit and I forget sometimes, but I will try my best, I promise. How about hype? I will check out hype. Let's get into it. I haven't actually looked at hype yet today. Check out the BloFin chart. I assume it's very similar to Bitcoin. The 1 minute is obviously going to have higher buy signals. Yeah, higher buys, higher sells. So that trend is still continuing beautifully as well. Once again, guys, this is exactly what I mean, is that here we end up getting, so we ended up printing a lower buy signal. So it's not so much that I would have taken that one directly. I don't have anything open here. I just have old lines. Don't get me wrong, this would have been a phenomenal entry had you taken this buy signal, but it was a lower buy, so momentum was not in favor of this indicator at that time. But we didn't end up printing a lower sell signal. We printed a higher sell signal, and then that higher buy signal, I mean, that would have been a beautiful position to get into. And again, just using basically the previous pivot point here, another way is, like I said, I often use these indicators as confluence more than just an entry on their own. And check this out. If we go from, hey, here's our higher buy signal, we got another higher sell signal. Well, let's just pull a fib from our previous buy signal and look at that. We end up consolidating right in the 786, 886 fib pocket and then blasting off from there with another higher buy signal. So just another way that you can kind of use indicators like this as confluence, even for when you're pulling, let's say, Fibonacci's, looking for more market structure and pullback based price action, right? Is you can use these as confluence. So very cool. Right now, again, same thing. I wouldn't really want to bet against the bulls at this point. I assume hype is also getting fairly close to some serious resistance. Holy, I have a bunch of old stuff mapped out on here, which I haven't looked at in a while. Let's actually remove all my drawings. So even on the 4 hour, notice that actually this is a level we were talking about, Adrian. I'm pretty sure is that, we were kind of eyeing up this support back here. And same thing, notice that this is obviously a much higher buy signal than the one down here. So where was our pivot point? Right here. And same thing, right? We could pull a fib from that level when looking for new entries. And yeah, we went a little bit lower, but we by no means came even close to invalidating it. We never even broke the lows. We never even got a swing fail there. But the 786, 886 would have been a beautiful entry there as well. So again, just a nice way to use some of these indicators as a little bit of confluence. But yeah, as far as the 4 hour goes, I mean, yeah, it's nice to see that we're getting some sort of a reaction off that level. Where would you want to start being a little bit cautious? I would be willing to pull a fib, something like this. And it's not so much the hype is one that I'm a little bit nervous to short, because I mean, it's still technically in price discovery. Whereas, something like Bitcoin's actually at all-time high macro resistance. This is just in price discovery. So I'd have a hard time shorting this, but if the lower time frames kind of lined up and having a similar setup inside, let's say, the 4 hour fib pocket from around, call it 42.62 up to 44.14, somewhere in that zone, if we start to see 1 minute or 5 minute bearish STUBER fibs aligning, I would consider shorting at that point. But I really see no reason why hype needs to stop before reaching that resistance. When it reaches that resistance, I would not be too surprised to see some sort of a pullback, because just looking at microstructure for what it is, I mean, we have this high, higher high, or higher low on the trend, and we've obviously broken that level, right? So at that point, whoops, let's just make that red because it's bearish because it broke. So at that point, I would be looking for that retrace up to resistance, right? Because again, break structure and then get some sort of a retest. That's very common price action. It doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin, altcoins, stocks, whatever. You see it all the time. So yeah, I see no reason why hype would have to stop anytime soon. I could see it going for a nice little run yet. Obviously, if something spooks the markets, so be it. But at this time, I don't really want to bet against this. Oh, nice. You got TP4. Yeah, I recall what you were talking about longing this at what, 32? I think last time we spoke, 32 to 34, something like that. BTC updation. Like Bitcoin analysis, I kind of went over most of mine. What's updation? Like I said, with Bitcoin, I mean, still has room, in my opinion, to climb higher, but we'll have to see if all of a sudden the indicators turn around and we start printing a series of lower sell signals on the Trendmaster indicator. I'm going to assume that we are turning around a little bit early, but at this point, I see no reason why we wouldn't test up to 108,000. And like I said, as far as a longer time frame, if we end up breaking this divergence on the RSI, the one that goes from overbought down to the 70 level here, if that extended trend line ends up breaking on the RSI and the RSI goes back into overbought conditions, then I will be getting bullish, assuming that, you know, the RSI is showing strength and the price is just lagging at that point. And I assume we would break out. Much like we did back here, right? After we ended up breaking the RSI trend line here, we ended up going for a nice little rip. Same with down here, ended up breaking the RSI trend line, went for another little pump. So I'd be looking for the same thing, basically. Same thing down here, right? As far as a full micro, or not a micro, a full macro market cycle here, same divergence. When we eventually end up breaking out, I mean, that was a massive signal. So something like that would lead me to be bullish once again. And guys, it's been a while. I would love to feel bullish and feel that FOMO again. I would love to feel it. DXY, yeah, I'll check out the DXY quick. That's an interesting one, and I haven't looked at it in a while. Let's start on the daily. I see we went a little bit lower. So I can adjust my fib very slightly. It has barely changed. So yeah, nothing's really changed from that. Basically, since we ended up taking out these lows back here, I was talking about, you know, it's very possible, just like with Bitcoin, right? It would be very natural for the DXY to end up getting some sort of a climb eventually before setting a lower high, because it has the structure supporting the bearish theory. Doesn't have to happen, but something to watch for. I don't know if the DXY is just going to continue dumping off a cliff here. You know, it would be very natural to get some sort of a bounce eventually. And I know a lot of people think that Bitcoin and the DXY have to be inverse correlated, but understand that sometimes they do move together. Not always, but sometimes. So I don't know. It's something that, yeah, it could be worth keeping an eye on, but I by no means use that to outweigh market structure with Bitcoin itself. I always look at market structure on the asset I'm trading first, and then kind of look for those confluences between other things. So, and this isn't one that I use all too much. I think if anything, honestly, stable coin dominance would mean more than the DXY at this point. But good to see we are still trying to hold this buy trend here. So on the lower time frames, Bitcoin's still looking good, still has a very strong uptrend. Like I said, I know people, even in this very chat, are calling me a perma bear. And like I said, I am in a bit of a late one, a shitty one. I'm going to call it a shitty long. But, it's actually, I'm not. You know what? It's profitable. I don't care if it was late, taking the nice, easy profits. So whatever. It's risk free at this point. I don't care. I would actually like to, if this uptrend is going to continue, if we just set a higher sell signal followed by a higher buy signal, I'm going to add another long to my position. Not add it to my position, but add another long position. I would open a separate one with a nice tight invalidation of wherever the next buy signal is again, unless it really takes off like this one. I debated adding another long position with this one, but just how it took off so quickly, we were already so far away from my invalidation level that I just never really thought it was worth it anymore. But that is something that I'll be looking for going into the evening. Where did I learn my market structure from? Fine gentlemen. I have learned from a couple very good traders. Some like, just watching other YouTubers in my earlier days. Now I rarely watch other people's analysis because I find that it makes me go a little bit blind to my own. I like to look at things my own way because I've back tested my own strategies. And, at that point, I kind of know my probabilities rather than taking someone else's word for it. But I learned a lot about market structure from, guys like Tony Vase, Sammy Loyal, MDX Crypto, a couple of the other coaches in there. Thing is, you're constantly learning more about market structure and how the charts move because they're always evolving. And as traders, we got to adapt. That's the whole thing with not being married to an idea, right? Like me being bearish, for example, if we end up invalidating my bearish levels, then I need to adapt to that and, change my idea, right? That's the main thing with trading. I mean, predicting and analyzing is great and everything, but actually pulling the trigger and your execution is what really matters. And that's where back testing comes in. SPX similar. I'll actually check the SPX as well. That is one that I haven't looked at in a week or stew. So the SPX is actually breaking above the STUBER fib that I've had pulled for apparently a couple weeks. That does not mean it's invalidated though. Just like with Bitcoin, I don't really feel confident about this uptrend, this bounce, until we've invalidated the 115. To be fair, I have not backtested my STUBER fibs on the S&P, but most assets generally treat market structure the same. So as far as, this would basically be my liquidity grab level, swing fail level, whatever you want to call it, double top territory, that would be up a little bit higher. But at this point, we're going to have to see. It's a nice, strong reaction. I like to see that, we never just tested the 786 and dropped off a cliff or anything like that. It's still trying to actually find support in this level. So, not all hope is lost yet. And generally speaking, I assume if the S&P 500 is doing well, crypto will probably do the same. Not necessarily, but generally speaking. Dan, good to see you here again. Levels WTI, please. What do you mean? Circle. I will look at Circle. That one was, I haven't been following it. I just know that it was on a ridiculous parabolic run right out the gate. Yeah, moving hundreds of percent within a couple of days. The 4-hour chart. Here's the thing, guys. There's not a ton of market structure here, but this is where we can get into micro analyzing a little bit. So notice that every time we set a higher high, we end up confirming a higher low, right? So here would have been our first higher high on, again, micro analyzing. I want to be very clear about that. So that would have been my support. As long as we hold that, we're in an uptrend, right? From there, basically higher high, again, very micro analyzing. We got a kind of a couple wicks below, but really we held that support and blasted off from there. Same thing when we end up setting another higher high here. That means our higher low doesn't really change because, you know, we never really confirmed a higher low at all. At this point, set another higher high. That's where we now have our lowest point between the two, moves up a little bit. And now we have another higher high. So that's where I'm looking at this as our higher low. So basically, if circle holds above 229, then it is still holding this 4-hour uptrend. I will zoom in a little bit just because there's such a small amount of history here. Obviously, we don't have a ton to go off of. I'll try and bring up my indicators and stuff as well, but they'll probably only work on very low time frames. Notice this structure is basically the same on the 1 hour as the 4-hour. Could maybe move it up no, actually, it's the exact same level because here we had our high, higher high, lowest point between the two. That's my confirmed higher low. So notice I'm not moving my higher low up to here just because we bounced a little bit higher. I am only setting my higher lows when we have a confirmed higher high. So at this point, if we do something like that, then I can confirm this as my higher low. And that's where I can start pulling new fibs, right? Something like that. If that's what's going to happen. Don't have the structure for it yet. Actually curious, did this test the STUBER? That did test the STUBER. So this is, like I said, guys, this is very micro analyzing. Obviously, just playing every little higher high in the very immediate trend. But notice that even this, it did end up playing out. We tested the 786. We hit the 0.5 target. It's a small range, but if that's the range that I have pulled, those are the levels. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. The next target would be around 284, that 214 fib target. And the reasoning for that 214 fib target is basically it's the opposite 786, right? If I pull from the top to where we have bottomed so far, notice that it's basically the 214 is just front running. That's opposite 786 a little bit. So that's kind of the reasoning there. Let's check out the trend master indicator. So yeah, we have our pink line as support, but no buy signal or anything. There just isn't even enough price history even on the 1 hour. The 5-minute might give us something. I'm going to erase some signals. So notice that ever since down here, basically, we've been setting higher sell signal, higher buy signal, higher sell signal. Although this is technically a lower buy signal, we still have the sell signals trending to the upside. And even right now, we have a sell signal, but it's significantly higher. So yeah, although we might see a retracement here, I don't give a ton of weight to this sell signal just because it is significantly higher and it's fighting the trend, right? I would rather see us either reclaim this really quickly and get a new higher buy signal, or even pull back and then get another buy signal down here. You know, that's where we could start looking, like I was talking about with Confluence before. If this is our previous buy signal, pulling a fib, something like this, I would expect to find support, or at least whether or not it's going to find support, but there is a potential support zone down at 177 US dollars down to about 161 US dollars. And then the actual bottom is obviously down at around 143. But the STUBER fib itself is more so that 177 to 161. What's the RSI? kind of in the middle of nowhere, right in the middle of the RSI, basically. So no strong divergence there or anything right now. For me, anyways, for the type that I use. So, yeah, obviously in a very strong uptrend. There's no arguing that. What goes up, I mean, you hear the saying, what goes up must come down. Eventually it might happen, but I would be scared to just randomly blindly short it, thinking it's overvalued without knowing what's going on behind closed doors, right? Oh, the Stuber levels of WTI. I can check that out. I assume this is what you're looking for. Oh yeah, you guys weren't kidding. Oil is down. So I'm going to start with the naked chart here. There's a couple different ways we could look at this right now. One is obviously we have, so this would have been the very microstructure high or low. Again, very micro, because we had this high and we got a little swing fail above that. So a slightly higher high. It's not a close, well, yeah, it's just kind of wicked above a little bit, but that's very micro analyzing. We could also say this structure for those of you who don't like micro analyzing so much. Either way, we have broke that uptrend. So if oil were to bounce, I could see it running into a little bit of resistance if we got to bounce something like this up towards that 73 US dollars. It would probably, I guess I shouldn't say probably. I don't know. I don't personally trade oil, but I would assume that if resistance is going to come into play, if it's going to get some sort of a reaction rally bounce, that's a level that I would definitely be watching. As far as on the opposite end, looking for support at this point, since we lost the micro trend, I would go right back to where this swing started. So starting back here at 54.80 up to our highs around 75.94. That would put our Stuber fib support down around 59.30 down towards 57.10, and then double bottom would be around 54.70. So a little bit of room to go to the downside, in my opinion. Once we end up hitting this support, that's where I would be interested in checking out lower time frames and seeing if you're getting any sort of lower time frame breaking a lower high, for example. At that point, then you kind of have those confirmations that maybe it's worth looking at along. But those would be the levels I'd be watching for now. I will map out this resistance as well. And also something that I want to make clear is, so this purple box is because I pulled the fib from where we've topped out to where we're currently sitting down here, or where we have bottomed so far. This purple box will actually change if my range grows, right? If the price ends up dumping all the way down towards this purple box, for example, that's where my fib would end up going to. If the price did something like this, in which case, obviously, my fib, my resistance box would actually drop a little bit with the price. So basically, when I get that structure break, that's when I start pulling a fib. And I don't know where that run is going to end. It's just I'm looking for that 786, 886 retrace before entering a position, basically. Long live the Stuber. Yeah, get a Stuber in a Stuber, the Stubception. Yeah, the old pump and dump, expected war, and then the Trump announcement of peace. Yeah, I mean, that should be really no surprise with how things have been going since January. It's tariffs on, tariffs off, war on, war off, trade deals on, trade deals off. I mean, it's all over the place. I say it all the time. Trade charts, not tweets. That's a StuTube copyright right there. Because, like, really, I mean, if tweets and fundamentals and headlines are going to affect the price structure will show it. If I wasn't in any position on Bitcoin, where would be a logical place to enter a trade? Good question. On the 4-hour, if I was looking for shorts, I would be basically looking for shorts between 108 and 109,000. I guess it actually depends what time frame you're playing. But as far as the 4-hour, that's kind of where I see. Actually, you know what? Maybe even slightly lower, because if I go from, we might see a slightly lower fib come into play. Really, yeah, we're actually significantly closer to that one, but basically anywhere between 106.6K up towards 109K, I think is where we could see resistance step in. I don't like setting blind orders on larger time frames like that. Maybe it's because I am more of a scalper and I do like to use higher leverage, but that's where basically once we get up to that 106,000, that's where I would start looking for, early structure breaks on the lower time frames or indicators suggesting that things are going to reverse. But I do think that the price could go a little higher yet. Doesn't have to, but that's just what I'd be expecting just from a structure point of view. Other than that, if you're looking for more of a swing long, then, that's where we're looking at a full retrace, basically, especially because it shot straight up like this. I would be pulling a fib. Currently, if this was our top and we reversed, I would be interested in longs down closer to 99.9 down towards 99K. Again, it really depends what time frame you're playing and what kind of a strategy you're looking at, right? Because like I said, I took a late long today, missed the bottom by far, but being I have a strategy with this indicator that I use, I was able to get into one with a fairly tight stop loss, right? So it really depends what you're looking for, what kind of time frame and everything. Even though I am a chart believer, okay. Even though you are a chart believer, do you still have a small hold of BTC? Oh yeah. I still hold most of my crypto. Like I said, I've been saying for a long time, even though I'm very bearish on the price as far as how I'm trading, I am very, very bullish on crypto long term, like long term. The thing is, guys, a lot of people who are giving me grief about flipping bearish at 110K, a lot of them never got into the cycle, into crypto until the media told them that Bitcoin was breaking all-time highs again. Whereas I've been bullish since 18 to 20,000. So for me to flip bearish and start taking a little bit of profits at 110K, when I'm up 500% on something, I feel like that asset doesn't really owe me anything for the cycle. But that being said, I still hold most of mine. I was just willing to pay myself a little bit and diversify a little bit and that sort of thing. But no, I still hold most of my crypto because, I trade both directions. I can short as a hedge to my portfolio and make my day-to-day money by shorting or longing, right? It really doesn't matter to me as long as it's volatile. But yeah, as a whole, I've been through I've been through 2 full market cycles. So the thought of holding through a bear market doesn't concern me. And that's one thing that is different from a lot of people who claim to be bullish that won't be around if we actually see a bear market. Whereas I can promise you, if we get a bear market, I will still be here and I will be thriving in the bear market and I will have more money at the bottom of it to end up buying that massive dip if it happens, right? That's why I don't mind trading both ways. I'm very bullish on Bitcoin as a whole. I trade it every day. I follow it every day. I use it every day. I do payments with it almost every day. I accept payments in it. You know, I love crypto. Everything about it is great. I love that it's so volatile. That's the main thing I love crypto, and why I'm so bullish on Bitcoin and follow it so religiously is because of the volatility, and that includes the downside swings. Yeah. Anyways, guys, I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. So hopefully you guys did find this stream useful. If so, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss these live streams in the future, and just show me that you appreciated being here with me. And as I mentioned, if you want access to my private Telegram channel where I share some of my theories, some of my trade setup ideas, just my overall thoughts on the market in general, there is a scannable QR code on the screen. And as well, in the description, there is a link as well that'll take you through my sign up bot, and that will get you into the group if that's something that interests you. And with that, thank you all so much for being here with me this fine evening. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your evening. And with that, I will catch you on the next one. Oh, sorry. I just saw there's one more question. MSTR, bag holder, losing faith, feels like a religion. One last thing. I will check out MSTR for you. I know what you mean, that it seems like a bit of a religion. But the thing is with MicroStrategy, I personally don't own any, but a lot of people seem to think that Saylor is going to end up getting wrecked, but they don't necessarily know how he's doing things. I keep seeing these liquidation prices of his and whatnot. I also always see people say, oh, he's always buying at silly times. Understand that when he's buying, it's usually because MSTR generally, I would say the times that I look, it feels like it's generally moving about 3 times more aggressively than Bitcoin. So if his stock is climbing way more aggressively than Bitcoin, and then he swaps some of that stock out for Bitcoin, or he borrows against it, or whatever he's doing, understand that just because he's buying Bitcoin at the highs, it means that he's taking money from his own company at even higher highs, if that kind of makes sense. And also, he's not the one kind of FOMOing into the cycle near the end, whereas a lot of people are going to, you know, when we start seeing a whole bunch of companies and that sort of thing, getting into Bitcoin treasuries or trying to play Michael Saylor and borrow and, you know, accumulate more the way he is. He's been doing it since the bottom of a couple cycles ago. So it's not like he's FOMOing in late. And I think that he truly has a very good grasp of what he's doing. So in the long term, I think that he's a very smart man. And I personally think MicroStrategy will do well. But that being said, if my bearish theories on Bitcoin are correct and we do see this deeper plunge, then I just have to assume that the MSTR stock is also going to go for a plunge, and probably even more aggressive one. But we are just going to have to see. I mean, as far as the structure goes, I see that I obviously already had something mapped out here. Is that still the one? Yeah, that purple box is still kind of the resistance I was expecting. Haven't even got to that level yet. Trend master indicators. So we got a higher sell signal. It is a sell signal, but it's higher. So I don't know. I still half expect us to get closer to the top of the range, but obviously we're going to have to see. Market gets spooked or Bitcoin does take that further tumble, then I would expect that MicroStrategy would do the same. But that's about all my opinion about it. Like I said, I think he's a smart guy, but I personally don't have any money invested in it or anything like that. So, but yeah, anyways, guys, one more time, if you did appreciate this stream, if you could do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you have not. And if you want access to that Telegram channel, there is the QR code in the screen there. It is free to join as long as you sign up and are trading under my BloFin link. And like I said, I just getting tongue tied, just kind of give my overall thoughts on the market, some of my trade setup ideas, some strategies, just more examples of STUBER fibs and how I'm looking at chart structure and indicators and all that sort of stuff. So if that does interest you, there is the QR code and the link in the description down below. With that, thank you all so much one more time for being here. Catch you on the next one. I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Peace.